Hi everybody, so this is a video all about my trip with Intrepid Travel, the Turkey Encompassed trip. It's a 15-day tour of Turkey that does a whole circle, and it's a comfort level, which is the top level on Intrepid. This is, I think, the 7th tour I've done with Intrepid, and I really love them. Everything's organised and taken care of. So we were doing a round trip of Turkey, all around the western part of Turkey, going through loads of different terrains and climates and cultures within Turkey. So we kicked off in Istanbul. So this is our guide Uğur, who was lovely. He's with us for the whole trip. There's our driver Ismail, again with us for the whole trip. And this is our minibus with about 10 of us in, I think there was. And we're just setting off, leaving Istanbul, but we had a quick stop before we left Istanbul.
This area is very strategic. Yep. So this water that we're passing through is the Golden Horn, 7.5 kilometers inland, goes this way to the west. And it looks like a horn.
So first of all, we quickly went to the Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque in the centre of Istanbul. It was a really beautiful area around the mosques, and we spent a few hours all telling us about the history of the area. This was a gift from Egypt, and everything was just super clean and well kept, and everyone was wearing masks. So crossing the bridge here in the middle of Istanbul is crossing the continents from Europe to Asia. So as we got out of the town, the scenery was beautiful. There was a lot of these industrial style buildings everywhere, and it became pretty apparent that there was a huge amount of manufacturing and industry. So this was our first location that we got to later in the day, Beypazarı, a sort of rural town about 100 kilometers from Istanbul. We went through the markets, and then we went to sort of take a look at a living museum. The idea was that it was like bringing the traditional ways of the Turkish people that lived in that area to life, which was really interesting. And one of the things that was everywhere in Turkey was freshly squeezed pomegranate juice and orange juice. I had so many freshly squeezed orange juices. It was so good. They really are selling them everywhere, the side of the road, everywhere. So this was an old traditional shaman fortune telling thing. That's one of the group there, that's the guide, and she heats metal, she drops it in water above your head, and the shape that it makes she used to tell your fortune. So a few members of the group did this, and this is part of the traditional mysticism, the shaman ways of life that the Turks had in the past. Even though they had an Islamic culture, there's also a lot of influences from these shaman ways, and a lot of mysticism and superstition in their belief.
Güzelliksin, nazarlıksın, nağda biter, evde bitersin. Güziden güdulsun, güzellik patlasın, nazar eden çat.
So the next day we left the town and we stopped off at this amazing salt lake, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So the water's obviously dried out and it's all salt. It was pretty busy, especially considering it wasn't peak season. And it just went on forever, went for miles. So we then entered Garome, the town next to Cappadocia, or part of Cappadocia, which is the famous volcanic landscape. Everything's volcanic, and it has the famous balloon rides, which I'll show you in a minute. So that evening in Cappadocia, we went to this really beautiful old building to see the Whirling Derbyshires, which were a group of men dressed in quite interesting outfits who spin around. It's something Turkey's famous for, and we were there about 45 minutes, and after them doing this walking around and chanting, they start spinning, and then they just carry on spinning for ages. They must have been spinning for half an hour. It's incredible how they don't throw up. They have to get themselves in a particular state of mind in order to be able to do it. And then this guy in the center, wearing the black outfit, he never span. He seemed to be like the master, the leader, and he just hung out in the center, and they all sort of walked around him and bowed and span as they're doing here. So then we went for dinner, and this is one of their famous clay pots that they serve food in and cook food in here. So we were up at, I think, about 4:30 to go and do our balloon ride for the sunrise. There were a huge amount of balloons, huge amounts of people, and I have done 2 other balloon rides before, and it worked very similar to how they were. And I have to say it was quite cold there, sort of no cloud cover, pretty cold, but it was fun to watch them all light up. And then it was really beautiful when we actually got in it. After the balloon ride, we went to see a traditional pottery maker. This guy, who we called Einstein, I'll let you guess why, had been sort of generations of the family making pottery. This is the traditional method where they spin it with their feet. And he didn't speak a word of English, or at least that's what he told us. So he got his assistants here to do all the communication. They gave us a nice little glass of local red wine there, and he showed us how to do pottery.
Fit or not fit, he's asking.
Fit.
Fit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, Master God has another demonstration for you. He will show how. Oh.
So we went on a couple of walks when we were in Cappadocia. This is Love Valley, where there are all these formations naturally formed from the volcanic materials and the erosion from water. You see where we're walking there is literally a path that's been created by water erosion. It was really cool. So here's an example of a guy literally at the side of the road selling orange juice. It would be about 20 or 15 Turkish lira, which is about £1.50 to £2, and it was amazing. So this is the morning after. We went to watch the people take in the balloons from the ground, which was really cool. They definitely had a worse day than us because look how cloudy it was, and I don't know what was going on with the air pressure, but some of them got really low. Some of them were basically touching distance from us, and there was some close calls with some of the rocks, definitely, which was quite comical to watch.
Great, we got to skip again. Oh, it's
Camera
great.
in front, like the one on the V.
And then as we left Cappadocia, we went to an underground city, which was really impressive, multi-layered, capable of fitting 20,000 people. And this was from the 8th century BC, so really ancient, really interesting, and the largest underground city in Turkey. Having just left Cappadocia and driving to Konya. So this was about 5 days into the Intrepid tour. So one thing I really noticed in Turkey is that there were cats everywhere. I don't think they are really owned by people, they're just looked after by all local residents. There are hundreds of cats everywhere. This was a really nice building that we stopped off at on the way to Konya that had been really lovely renovated, though this was quite funny. The pigeons that sit there on the circular roof had created this circle of pigeon droppings. And again, this was just a stop off along the journey. There's our van, the Intrepid van, pretty small, but there was enough room for each of us to have like 2 seats each, which was great. So this is once we got to Konya. And in Konya, we went to the Mavlana Museum, and Konya is the sort of heart of the Sufi, mystic, Islamic culture. This is, our guide said this was one of the wonders of the ancient world or modern world, I'm not quite sure now. And it's basically the tomb just there at the back of the sort of founder of this style of Islam, this Sufi Islam. So it was a beautiful, ornate area, and the museum has some really old Qurans, and it was just really, really old. The town itself was very conservative, most conservative place we went in all of Turkey, so it felt really quite different. But this was the sort of main mosque lit up at night, really beautiful. So leaving Konya, we drove right the way up into the mountains. This was the highest point in all of Turkey, right at the top of a very large hill, and we stopped to have pancakes. So there's a classic Turkish dish which you can see being made there. Really, really tasty pancakes with savoury fillings like cheese and meat. They were absolutely delicious, and I think the meal ended up costing us maybe like £2 or something. This was a amphitheatre that we stopped at on the way as well. The semicircle built by the Greeks, and then the Romans built the other section. You can see it's a different kind of color stone. Really cool, and the acoustics were amazing. You could hear what someone was saying from any point in the whole building. So our next point was Antalya, there on the coast. This was a popular tourist spot, lots of 5-star resorts.
Be careful, it is slippery. It's marble and glaze.
Our next up was Kaz, just a little further down the coast, and I think this was my favourite place that we visited. It was just so peaceful and beautiful and less touristy than Antalya, and we spent this amazing day on a boat. So this was actually an ancient town where there'd been a landslide here into the sea, and you could still see the remnants of buildings. You see like there, that's the foundation of a building. Of course, totally wiped out. I think maybe there was an earthquake, and it was amazing that it was all kind of just still there from thousands of years ago.
You know, we're lucky to see that train still.
Dervish in the sea.
Was Pamukkale, which is where there are these amazing hot springs with calcium carbonate that create this really beautiful white blue pools.
It's all the way down here. That was their agora. We'll talk about agoras. A-G-O-R-A. You know agoraphobia.
So the next day we stopped off at a Turkish carpet place, and it was really interesting to learn about the whole culture behind the different types of carpets and the level of work that goes into creating them. We learned about the sort of thread count, like how many stitches there are and the type of stitches compared to like a Persian carpet. And some of these carpets were worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, and people collect them. This one there was about 30,000. That was one of their most exquisite ones. And these literally take years to make because they're so fine and so detailed. So it was actually really interesting to find out about them.
Like, mommy.
Like, mommy, hug me as well.
This one hasn't moved a bit.
Yeah.
It's like,
I hope he's still alive.
So next up was Selkirk, which is where Ephesus is, one of the most important ancient sites in Turkey and in that Aegean Mediterranean area. So this is the Temple of Artemis, one of the ancient wonders of the world, pretty much completely destroyed by earthquakes, and all the remaining bits of pillar and everything are actually in the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul now. So they've been removed and reused by the Ottomans. So this is the museum near Ephesus in the town of Selkirk, where a lot of the more delicate things like the statues are kept. And there's all sorts here from Bronze Age, Iron Age, right the way through the Greek and then the Roman times through to the Ottoman times, Byzantine, literally thousands and thousands of years of history all in one place. And I found that in general with Turkey, how interesting it was that so many massive civilizations had come and gone in that exact same area and inhabited the same towns and made them their own.
Yeah.
So this is an ancient mosque there in the town of Selçuk. Absolutely huge building with pillars from Roman times. So we then stopped off at Troy, what's left of Troy. This is a model of course, the famous horse of Troy. And again, you could see the different layers of the city of Troy, where the Greeks and the Romans and the Byzantines had inhabited it. It was amazing that it was still there and had been for thousands of years. And I found it interesting. You'll see that the vegetation had changed completely as well. We had oak trees, it was a bit cooler, whereas previously in Antalya and Kaz we had palm trees. And then of course in Cappadocia it was like a volcanic dry rock, almost desert-like landscape. So this is us at our penultimate stop, Pamukkale, which is a town near the Gallipoli Peninsula. This is the horse of Troy that was used in the movie Troy. Not sure if it's made of fiberglass or wood, wasn't quite sure, but they gifted it to the town after the movie came out. So we then took a little ferry which took about 10-15 minutes from the town over to the Gallipoli area, and this was our official crossing back from Asia to Europe. So this is an area that was invaded in the First World War by the Allies, the Australians, New Zealand, Anzac forces they're called, and this is the memorial. We saw the beach where they landed. That was actually a picture of a Turk private holding up a Anzac general after he'd been wounded. There are separate cemeteries for the Turkish troops and for the Anzac troops, and all the trenches and everything are still there, and the area is now a national park. It was really beautiful remembrance area and really powerful message about the futility of war when you see the endless graves of young men in their late teens and early 20s.
Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, he says, "We are not interested in personal heroes. All know they're gonna fall."
So our final stop was to return back to Istanbul. via the northern European part of Turkey. And we had a evening in Istanbul. We went to check out the spice market and Grand Bazaar. And as you can see, Istanbul really, really busy, quite a liberal town compared to other areas in Turkey, very multicultural, and so many of these shops trying to sell you anything they can. So these are actually fishing lines of people stood on the bridge fishing. It's jam-packed, so there is not a single space free. And here, walking underneath the bridge, you can see what they pull up. This was the restaurant we went to where he brought up the different fish for us to see and choose what we wanted. I think we had the sea bass, the one that he's pulling up there now.
Purple fishes, that is for the sea, for the
What it
Marmara.
means is these are all wild fish, caught from the sea. They're by kilo.
So this was a yacht coming up to collect an order for the people on board for them to have dinner, collecting it from our restaurant under the bridge. And that was it pretty much. I had the morning to wander around town the next day and then flew home. And it was great to see so many different places of Turkey. I feel like there's so many different countries within Turkey. It was a really good tour and great value for 15 days, I think. Really interesting, and I learned a lot.